Galactus, eater of worlds, devourer of planets, absentee father? When characters have existed for as long as Galactus, it's not uncommon for people to try and start adding to the backstory. Sometimes these additions can take an interesting turn, or just exist in interesting works. Not all of them end up being canonical, it can vary from character to character, and Galactus has been on quite the journey. Galactus debuted in Fantastic Four number 48 in 1966, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby as a mysterious and dangerous figure, a cosmic being with a hunger that can only be sated by consuming large planetary masses no matter who lived on them. Over the years, the menace level of the character has changed. It's there at points, but there have also been things that have made him less grandiose over time. Less of a big event. You'll have to let me know if you feel that some of these changes have made him a more fun or interesting character or not. One thing that is definitely still fun, playing HeroClix. Hi, me from the future tell you this video is brought to you by friends of the channel, Wizkids. Normally when we're looking at HeroClix, we've chatted about them before. That's where this Galactus came from. But today we're looking at something different, but still under the board game, and in this case Marvel umbrella. Damage Control. This game is available for pre-order, time of recording. It's coming out April 2023. Damage Control takes its cues from the Marvel Comics mini-series about, well, damage control. It's a game that can have 2 to 4 players wherein you play as rival cleanup companies. See who it is that can be the best cleanup crew after all of the disasters that befall the Marvel universe, where you'll find artifacts and the like. And you can have some fun with it, because some of the things you'll find will be dark, like Doc Ock's severed tentacles. Like all of Wizkids' offerings, it's accessible and easy to learn and jump into. Gameplay runs around 30 minutes, so it's good if you want something quick to ease into your game night. The pre-order price is $34.99, so if you're interested, you can order now and use my code CASUALLY10 for 10% off. I will of course have the link down below in the description so you can check it out. Damage Control is a fun concept, and we'll go over it in a moment because they can interact with so many different characters in the Marvel universe, including the likes of Galactus. I love holding up my HeroClix Galactus. He's so solid. You can change his head too, you know. The helmet is what makes him menacing, in my opinion. He's not the same with his helmet off. I don't know. What do you think? I think we gotta stop nerfing Galactus. But he has a bit of a harder hill to climb now that he's a bit less otherworldly, and that's not the only change that has been introduced to the character. People know more about him and his motivations. He's been defeated several times, even killed. They've also introduced several family members. We did a whole video on Galacta, daughter of Galactus, who was introduced in a kind of out-of-canon mini where editors got to play with ideas they had. Gali was created by Adam Warren of Empowered fame and Hector Sevilla Lujan. She was an always hungry and tweeting, seemingly ordinary teenage girl until you learned about where she really came from. Then you could see the true scope of her hunger and how much she was always trying to keep it under control. 2021, the Defender series by Al Ewing introduced Galactus' mom, Taya. There was much flirting with Doctor Strange in these issues. Somewhere out there's a fanfic where Doctor Strange is Galactus' stepdad. And if there isn't, I've just willed it into existence. A lot of the Here Come Galactus family member stories come off a bit fanficky. This in terms of tropes in play. While the surprise family member or just the reveal of a family member is 100% used in the mainstream, it has become a commonplace staple in transformative fandom. It's its own little subgenre. The surprise family member is just a classic. It's usually a daughter, and we've seen a manifestation of that already with Galacta. But we're equal opportunity Marvel for surprise Galactus children, so here's his son. I just turned into an announcer there for a minute. Introducing. All of this brings us to the aforementioned Damage Control. Damage Control has had several runs in Marvel Comics. It was pitched by co-creator Dwayne McDuffie to Marvel Comics as a sitcom within the Marvel Universe. His pitch and the notes on it are online, and it's very fascinating. He's very clear and concise in how he describes the thought process, and you know I'm gonna read some of it for you. It's quote time. I think I know how to do something that I understand has never worked out too well for Marvel. I have an idea for a humor series with a hook that could attract the hardcore fan audience without turning off a less knowledgeable reader. Damage Control is intended to be an ensemble cast situation comedy, along the lines of The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Barney Miller, Taxi, WKRP in Cincinnati, Cheers, and the like, but set firmly in the Marvel Universe, and that's bolded. As in those shows, Damage Control will focus on the lives of a group of people who have an interesting and/or unusual job, and on the odd people that their job brings them in contact with. It's the nature of the unusual job that serves to connect Damage Control with the Marvel Universe. Damage Control is a Manhattan-based company that specializes in the cleanup, repair, and restoration of property damage caused by superpowered activity. So as one can see, this is a simple premise, and when you have something like that, it's all going to come down to the execution and whether the sitcom style of humor suggested can translate into Marvel Comics. The concept would have a slow rollout, testing the waters, appearing first in a 5-page story appropriately enough called Sales Pitch in 1988's Marvel Age Annual. This issue would also pitch the entire concept of the series and try and hype it up, this by linking it to as many heroes as possible. Pitch time! Damage Control is a sitcom set in the Marvel Universe. Dwayne told us it's about a group of people whose job is to clean up after superheroes break stuff. In the first issue, they have to clean up a giant robot that the Avengers and Spider-Man beat up. It's leaning against the World Trade Trade Center. They have to figure out how to move it. Also, Spider-Man, who defeated the robot by sneaking inside the control room and turning it off, is stuck in there and can't get out. So they have to decide whether they can move the robot with him inside it, or even if they should, because they're afraid of getting sued or something. Look for lots of guest stars. Early on, Damage Control will cross paths with the Punisher, get a helping hand from Iron Man, and clean up some insurance problems for the Fantastic Four. They'll also meet Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom owes them money, so one of the guys goes over to get him to pay his bills. Dr. Doom must be so tired of people just coming over and demanding the money that he owes them. Did he ever pay Power Man? Did he? All of this would lead to 3 miniseries. They were released from 1989 to 1991. The first two by the creators, Dwayne McDuffie and Ernie Colon, and the third having a different artist, Kyle Baker. From the 5-page story that you see in the annual, the tone is very clearly established, and it does have that aforementioned sitcom feel. These are regular people having to interact with these Marvel characters. And they try to maintain some level of verisimilitude between both the Marvel characters and their characterization and these people working for this company, and that's part of where some of the humor comes from. It's a balancing act. Make it good. If I don't like what I hear, I'm gonna see how far I can throw you. Terrific. We'd like to hire you as our spokesman. In return, we'd be willing to provide services that, maybe this pamphlet will explain. Let me read it to you. Give me that. I can read. Can you afford damage control? Of course you can. Probably not. I'd say no, I probably can't afford damage control. Property damage is gonna have to stay in these streets. It's a clever little way to pitch the concept and introduce the characters. It's fun. So basically the tone is comedic, yes. Ridiculous, no. Over the top and a little silly slightly. Here are some examples from the first mini. Hey Marie, Robin wants to know if you speak German. Marie, clean up the giant lizard, would you? There's a dead dinosaur in the Hudson, Marie. Can you take care of the giant grasshopper? This is why I left Tokyo in the first place. Can I see some ID? Be quiet, Bart. It's policy. Do not reprimand the boy. His correct procedure should always be followed to the letter and must have order. Do you have any photo ID? Lord, if you get me out of this one, I'll get out of the next 3 all by myself. So these series are occupying their own little space, kind of. Like, they're sort of canonical, but not necessarily strictly so. Sometimes the Marvel characters act a little bit off, but still outside of their base traits. They're just being exaggerated as necessary to fit inside of these confines. But they're not going to be radically altered. It's a concept that's not going to work for everyone, but has its appeal. Damage Control also made its way over to the MCU as the US Department of Damage Control, the DODC. They first appeared in Spider-Man Homecoming and since then have popped up in No Way Home, She-Hulk, and Ms. Marvel. So entries with a more attempted overt comedic flair. And 2022 would see Damage Control get another miniseries, only this time it'd be 5 issues. It got promoted. This one was not helmed by McDuffie as he had passed away in 2011. Instead on writing duty we have Hans Rodionoff and Adam F. Goldberg, the latter being a sitcom writer and creator of The Goldbergs, a sitcom based on his own childhood. The art is by Will Robson, colors Ruth Redmond. That is for the first 2 issues. For the next 3 issues, the art is by Nathan Stockman. And it is a very noticeable shift in art. The focal point of the series is Gus. We follow Gus around. He's a young man who is set to join Damage Control. Like that time when the Hulk went crazy after he came back from that planet filled with all the other Hulks? This was way before that, back when I was just a lowly intern, and if you make the cut, that's exactly what you'll be. Wow. Where are you now? Head intern. Gus is also always eating, which at first comes across like just your standard sitcom gag. Now, reception to this series overall was mixed. Some felt it was a good recreation of the original tone, others felt it was way too silly and missed the mark and made a mockery of the Marvel Universe. Damage Control 2022 was released into a very different environment than 1991's last Damage Control. Just in terms of the comic environment itself, the fandom, the discourse. And on top of that, there are differences in tone between the two, just based on the differences in creator and the changes in sitcom comedy over time. It can be difficult to emulate another series of style, especially after decades. And on top of that, again, the new creators and the ever-shifting tides of comedy. Although some would argue that some things are universally funny. Miles will vary, and that's not the focus today, comparing the 2 series. Instead, our focus is Gus, who is having shenanigans as they, Damage Control, try to find him a department that suits him. Because he's not fitting in any. He's a disaster, and his hair is so pointy. Each issue of this mini essentially boils down to they place Gus into a department and he messes it up. Although he can also fade into the background a bit and other characters can pull to the front. That can either be other office workers or other superheroes or villains inside the Marvel Universe. This series does feel highly unconnected from the rest of the Marvel Universe, so some weren't sure where to slot this in, especially if they just picked it up and weren't familiar with Damage Control or the concept, but others felt it was in line with its predecessor Ghostbusters as a quasi-canonical humor outing. Now, Gus himself doesn't have much of a personality. He's your typical affable fish out of water. He doesn't know how things work, so he can ask the right questions or be the butt of the right joke. Gus wants to do well, but doesn't have a lot of drive or motivation, and by the series' end, the reader gets the question they may have been asking answered. Just why are we following Gus? And just why is there such a hub about him being justifiably fired? This job may have some silly situations, but it's a serious job. What do you mean fired? I made it absolutely clear that we needed to find a place for Gus at damage control where we could keep a close eye on him and know his whereabouts at all times. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what he did. The fact that we fired him is not going to go over well, and he comes from a very powerful family. Wait, are you saying this is all some kind of nepotism thing? Gus was a total liability, and he had to go. It doesn't matter who that goofball is related to. It matters a great deal. The Silver Surfer? The Silver Surfer is showing up to say that Gus needs to be kept constantly occupied. This so that he never learns the truth about his origin. For he is the son of Galactus, sort of. He's a splinter off of his helmet, which is made of primordial matter. And over the time it floated through space, it formed into Gus upon hearing the energy and cries from Earth. This is it. This is the payoff to him eating all the time. It was a buildup. So this is different than Galacta, where Galacta is asexually reproduced. They set up some sequel bait with the idea that Gus is out there wandering around and has the Galactus seed, which is a cosmic heart that's supposed to be able to give birth to the next universe. Loki had hidden the seed at one point, but it's now said that it was just here at damage control, chilling in their warehouse in a little box that said danger. And now it's out there with the spawn of Galactus, well, of his helmet. All fear Gus, son of Galactus. This series seems to have flown a bit under the radar. Time of recording, filming, and editing, April 2023. Gus doesn't even have an active / filled out fandom wiki. Will something be done with Gus? Time will tell. He may just fade into the kind of in-between canon realm that Galacta is in, although Galacta is much more remembered, partially for her very thirsty and at times vore-inducing character design. Gus was kinda average, but who knows, you could do something more with this, either comically or dramatically. You know, this little piece of Galactus growing ever stronger in the hunger and power, maybe even size. He's paired with a seed that could spawn a whole new universe of matter to consume. You could have a rivalry between Gus and Galacta, where she tries to get away from her nature and he embraces it. Galactus, absentee father. On the comedy side, Gus is just waiting for one of those big bad reveals where all the superheroes go, who? He's also got that energy where he could be a villain by accident. But yes, there you have it. Gus, eater of sandwiches, muffins, and cake. What do you think? Did you read this series? Do you like the idea of Gus or any spawn of Galactus? Do you feel like this series falls into what McDuffie was talking about when he pitched the initial idea? Awkward Marvel comedy. Fun, silly, devaluing Galactus? Tell me things down below. I as always want to hear all your thoughts. I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon in another video. Bye-bye.